That's really solving the problem.
Naozaj to vyrieši problém?
Because I know
Lebo ja viem,
next time
na budúce
they will do it again.
spravia to opäť.
A long time ago I also was a teacher and I was a school leader in primary schools. And in my work, in my daily work, still, I have discovered that it's so important to use the voice of everyone who is working in the educational system, to use the voice. And when I look at how we are mostly doing educational change or working in education, is that we do not listen to everyone's voice. So I have experienced that inviting people, young and old, to talk about education and to talk about their ideas, that people become more motivated to change the system. So the more I'm doing this work, the more I'm convinced that we should use the voice of teachers and the voice of students to improve our education. And I'm working this week in Slovakia, and I see exactly the same happening as when I'm working in the Netherlands or in other countries. It's very simple, I think. We should rehumanize the educational change. And again, by doing this, we will see that people become more engaged, more involved, because the more people are getting involved into the change, the more ideas will come out of our ways of communicating and being in relation. So when I talk about this work, then I give it the name social constructing. So we should social construct education. So schools and institutes are made by people. And especially schools are made by people, but also for the benefit of people. So we should always ask the question in our schools, but also in our Ministry of Education, what is it what we are doing? And is what we are doing, is that what we want? And is, by doing this, the product which is coming out of our working together, is this product positive? Is this helping children? But also, is this helping teachers to make the best education? So I think when we would ask these questions more and would be open to dialogue about this, my experience is that we will find the best solutions to construct the best education we want. And the most nice thing which is coming out of this is that when we construct the best education, using the voice of the child and using the voice of the teacher, very simply, and we are using their ideas, then people feel heard and seen, and they want to give more ideas to improve the system. And then something is happening. The teachers will become more happy, but also the children will become more happy. And I strongly believe that when we feel more self-confident and happy, then we will make better improvements for the long term also. So that's my passion and my work. I have done great work in South America. There was a question from the government to improve primary education. And I was thinking, well, we can improve a lot within education, but we need a strong vision about what we want. Normally, we would ask the experts from outside to talk about what would be the best vision, because they are the expert, they have learned about this. But that's not my way of working, because I know it's very important to involve the voices from as many people into the change process. So I started the process to talk with many people in the society in South America. It was in Suriname. And we started to talk about their dreams and hopes. because I knew that every human being hopefully will have at least one positive experience with adults. So we started a huge dialogue in the country with little groups to talk with them about positive experiences about being held by adults. So people started to talk about their parents helping to make a boat, other people talking about teachers helping them with homework or whatever, grandmothers, grandfathers, etc., etc. So we use these thousands of stories, we use them to find elements which are important to have this vision for child-friendly, pupil-centered education. So this process took more than 2 years, and the more we were working, the more people felt this is very positive what we are doing. And perhaps for your understanding, when you look at the country Suriname, it's a very difficult situation. It's a developmental country. There is sometimes lack of leadership, lack of money, lack of knowledge. So it was really a challenge to establish a change process. So in the end, we collected all these stories and we invited many people, started dialogues, used artists who gave their work to make the book we were writing as beautiful as possible. Because I was thinking when we would write and make together a book which would be the most beautiful book with the voices and the stories of the people, then I was sure people would start to read this book. So in the end we succeeded to produce more than 10,000 books. And then the challenge was to spread these books out in the country. But we succeeded because in the meantime people felt a lot of trust in the process. They were motivated and they wanted to commit to the process. So you could say it was a kind of a spider web which was growing and growing and growing. So the spider web was growing because more and more people were participating. So instead of one people, the expert, or 2 or 10 people, 20, 30, 100, 500, in the end more than 10,000 people were involved in this spider web. And then something is happening because the wider the spider web, the more ideas will come out of the spider web. So when I would have approached the process as just a one single event from one person, then perhaps I would have had 2 or 3 ideas. But now I had hundreds, thousands of ideas to strengthen the change process. And we used these ideas. And well, that in the end it resulted into this book. The book was called I Believe in You, with the many stories of the people from society. And I Believe in You stands for I really believe in you, child or student. You have the power, you have an engine to develop. You have strengths and talents. And we should use these talents for your own development, because when you will develop in the best ways, we all will profit as a society from your talents. So that was a great experience. So when we look at education, then we are very used to talk about problem children. And perhaps it's very strange when I'm telling this, but I think we don't have any problem children. So when I was telling this to the people in Suriname, South America, and I knew that there were many problems in the classrooms, they were shocked. Because of course they would say, well, we have problem children. Then still I would say, no, we don't have problem children. We label children as problem. And as soon as when we are going to label them, we are going to treat them as special needs children. And what then happens is that we will treat them differently than the normal children. It's also a label. But I think all children are special needs children. We all have our special needs. And when we change the conversation and the language, not to talk about problem children, but about problem situations, then suddenly we discover The children are not making the problems. We are making the problems. The system is making the problems. So we should look with new eyes, with different eyes to our children, look at their strengths, look at their possibilities, and perhaps we should reflect more about our own way of doing as adults or as experts who are working in this educational system. So I think it's very important when we would like to change our education, then we should start with the adults. Because I think there is the key for change. And mostly it's, let's say it's a challenge because we have this mindset, perhaps of looking at our education and our classrooms in problematic ways. So we see problems, which there are, but when we only talk about problems, we will keep the problems. So we should change our communication into talking about possibilities and chances and opportunities. So what I'm not trying to say is that we should not talk about problems, but we should talk perhaps little more less about problems and more about solutions and opportunities. Because as soon as we are talking about solutions and opportunities, we will find them. And the other thing is that it will also give more positive energy. I use this principle many times also in teacher staffs. So just one simple suggestion I'm doing with teacher staffs is, listen in your team room, I think that's the word, listen in your meetings. How are we talking when we are talking about education and children? And perhaps we discover that we are using a lot of red language. And I mean problem language, such as complaining, frustration, negativity. Sometimes this can be, it can be understandable because we have all kinds of problems. But we can change also our way of talking in our meetings into green language. And then we just shortly talk about the problems, but then we start a conversation about what do we wish tomorrow in our classrooms. And how can we, and not I, but how can we do things differently tomorrow? And then I always explain to teachers, this doesn't cost any money. Because sometimes we wait for the money. It's just another way of communicating with each other. So we can communicate in more positively ways with our colleagues, but we can also talk more in positive ways with our children, students. We can also talk in more positively ways with our parents. So let's involve these people into our change process. An important thing to understand is that we are very easily to talk about the teacher, and that the teacher, of course, should change mindset and should change the way of teaching. But there's a danger in society that we are very easy to blame the teacher for not doing the right things. And I think we should stop blaming the teacher, because the teacher, I really believe, is trying to do her best. But the teacher is working in this system which is not always supportive for teaching to doing the best. So we cannot blame the teacher for perhaps not having good education, but we should look more at the system as a whole. And I think there's a high responsibility for the policymakers and the Minister of Education and the leaders within our system, because the teachers need the leaders to have this positive change. They can do a lot of great work in their classrooms, but if we want to make it more sustainable, the teachers need the leaders to support them in the best ways by having this connection and dialogue with each other. And my experience personally in the Netherlands, but also in other countries, is that as soon as the teachers are getting involved, engaged, being really interested in what is happening in the schools, then we see change happening. because then we are connected and then we can make also more positive change. I have this good example from South America, in Suriname, where there is not always good leadership and corruption and negativity and etc., less money to do the change. So people were used to wait for the government and were used to wait for the system to be changed. And I can understand this, because it's important, of course. But then I have also a good experience with the teachers and their school leaders not to wait for the system to change, because we are wanting to construct, to build a good future for children, and we cannot wait 10 or 20 years when the systems are ready, because the future is already in our schools today, and these children, they cannot wait 10 years before the system has changed, because they will be our future doctors, and they will be our future parents, mothers, fathers, but perhaps even one of them will become perhaps the Minister of Education or the President of the country. So we have already the future in our classrooms, and they cannot wait for the change till we are 10 years later, because then they are 20 or 30 years old. Then they are out of the system, and then it's too late, I think. So my experience is that we teachers and schools can already start today to change our way of doing things in schools with the aim or the goal to construct better, positive education. There's a very positive way to approach educational change or education or a learning process, and it's called an appreciative approach. So that means that we are going to look for strengths in the child, or to look for strengths in the teacher, or we are looking for strengths in the teacher's staff, and as soon as we have detected these strengths, we can use them in our change. So by this we are strengthening also the change process. So we should look for talents of children, because children are more than just mathematics and language. Children are also music and sports and perhaps social beings, which are very capable in dealing and making friendships. So I think by using appreciative ways we are looking for the many potential things which are already in the people we are working with. It's my experience that when we are doing this, it's very simple, then this child is seen in more positive ways, but also the teacher is seen in more positive ways. So for example, this week I had a training, and one of the persons in the training was telling, I am a pessimistic person. So that was interesting, because I was thinking you are very open at this moment. Thank you for this. So we could label pessimism as negative, but I was changing language, appreciative language. So I was telling, well, when you are pessimistic, you have a good quality, because a pessimist mostly looks at the things which are not there at this moment. And the optimist is looking at the things which are already there. So when we want to have a balance in our school, we should give voice to the pessimistic person and not shut the voice or silence the voice, but use the voice in appreciative ways. So what I did do is, well, I'm curious, I'm interesting. Tell me more about this. Can you tell me about the things you are missing at this moment? And then she started to talk about the things you were missing. And I, as an optimist, could use her feedback to talk about the missing things. So in this way the process became more complete. And the other positive thing was that this person felt seen and heard. So I saw that she was more smiling, feeling more confident, because she was thinking being a pessimist is not good. So I was explaining being a pessimist all the time is not good. But I have never met a person who is 24 hours a day pessimistic. But you also, and that was the good news for this person, you as a pessimist can also develop optimism. But you only need to know how, but it's possible. So it was a great example in how we can use appreciative ways to always to also use the opposite voice, or the voice who is against. Yeah?